Yo, 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 what's that word? This is Third 12 Inning Podcast, episode 18. We about to knock it out the park. Now, today we're going to be college football focused. We're going to focus on the big three in Florida. That's Miami, Florida, Florida State. State champs, we in the building. I digress. But again, how we going to start this one off is we're going to talk about the Florida Gators. We're going to check out our notes here. We're going to break it down by the preseason expectations, what actually happened, my top four favorite new additions, whether that's transfers or recruits. We're going to talk about their best win and their best loss, and their wildest recruiting story as far as we know. And we're going to give a pessimistic outlook and a positive outlook for all three of them. Without further ado, again, we're going to start off with the Florida Gators. So preseason expectations, they're expected to go around 8-4, finish third in the SEC East behind Georgia and Tennessee. What actually happened is, and they were unranked. That's very important to mention. Now, what actually happens is they finished 6-7 with an embarrassing loss to Oregon State in the bowl game, 30-3 or 3-30. Now, their best win, in my opinion, was game number one. They won 29-26 in the swamp against the number 7 ranked Utah Utes. This was a very impressive win. I watched this game through and through. It officially launched Anthony Richardson into the Heisman campaign, the Heisman race. He was excellent in this game. It took him a little while to get going, but it showed us that even when his passing wasn't all the way up to snuff, he's a great athlete, can use his legs, and he really looked like Cam Newton at Auburn in this game. And he had to be that to pull this win out. Obviously, a tough opponent, and they're facing Utah in game number one coming up next year. We know Anthony Richardson declared for the draft, so he won't be the QB. It's looking like it might be Graham Mertz, and trust me, we'll talk about the QB situation at Florida coming up in a little bit. Now, the worst loss. To me, the worst loss was only the second loss against Vanderbilt in Tennessee since 1989. Obviously, this was embarrassing. I watched this game too. It didn't seem like the Gators really took them serious or that they were well prepared. It seemed like they had got the big head, either the South Carolina game was before this or after this. That was another great win. It could have honestly been their best win, depending on how the season was going. But Vanderbilt, nonetheless, was the worst loss, one of the worst losses in program history. Florida should never lose to Vanderbilt, but we understand things happen. Now, moving on to their four best new additions, in my opinion. Before we do that, before we jump into that, we have to talk about Jaden Rashada. It's a huge loss anytime you lose your quarterback that's been committed for a long period of time in your recruiting class, especially a 5-star, number 29 overall ranked quarterback by 247. That's where all our recruiting rankings are coming from. Be transparent. They say they lost him because these are the details that are out there. He was promised $13 million. Once the booster for Florida found out he had to pay that, he wasn't willing to pay that. So long story short, they come out of the loose end looking like they're broke or they can't afford it. It seemed like it was an ego battle up top between the Gator Collective CEO, I think his name is Eddie, his last name starts with an R, and John Ruiz from Miami. This is very disappointing. Obviously, other schools are going to use this to negatively recruit, to the elite recruits at least, that if they promise you something, there's no guarantee they're going to pay it, which, as we know now, ultimately led to Jaden Rashada requesting a release from his national letter of intent and leaving the Gators without without a freshman quarterback in this class. It's not signing day yet. Maybe they circle back on some guys, maybe some developmental prospects, but they're going to the season with the quarterback room they have, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, their four best additions, in my opinion, were Brodrick Jackson, cornerback from Osceola in Orlando, Florida. He's 6'1", 180 pounds. I really like this film. He has really long arms. Plays with really good technique. Miami was trying to flip him at the end. We know those guys were battling, but I really like this player. And I think he has a chance for early playing time. Him along with DeJuan Johnson. Number 2, I like Will Norman. The Gators have lost a lot of depth on their defensive line, in the front 7 in general. He's 6'5", 290 from East Side High in New Jersey, also by way of IMG Academy. I really liked this film. He's already well developed coming in as a freshman. And like I said, due to the deficiencies they're facing on the defensive line, I could see him getting some minutes, not starter caliber reps, but maybe they'll find him some rotational minutes. I think they're going to need this guy though. Another underrated recruit in that class was Andy Jean. Reminds me a lot of Amari Cooper. 6'1", 180 pounds from Miami Northwestern. Very smooth route runner, sure-handed receiver. I like the way he goes up and catches the ball. It just seems like when the ball in the air, he has a mentality, that dog mentality, that I'm going to go get the ball. And I appreciate that about him. Lastly, I liked it. Hopefully I'm not butchering his name. Micah Mazaku. 6'5", 331-pound redshirt sophomore from Baylor. In the beginning of the season, he became the 6th ranked guard to come out in some projected mock drafts. I really like this guy. He's going to have to replace Ethan White. Obviously, they also picked up Damian George to replace Michael Tarquin. So I like these pickups for the Gators along the offensive line. I kind of wish they would have attacked the offensive line a little bit more aggressively and just use the portal more in general. Now, finally, we're going to get into my pessimistic outlook first. We're going to keep the positive for last. Pessimistic outlook for the Gators. Arguably, the roster looks worse than last year. The Jaden Rashada situation is really embarrassing. And the schedule is setting up to be even harder than it was last year. Obviously, we know they play in the top conference in America with Georgia and Alabama still being buzzsaw. Tennessee improving. Ole Miss with their quarterback shenanigans. But they're bringing in the talent that they need. They have great running backs. And I think they're doing better with the defense, bringing in Pete Golding from Alabama. So Ole Miss is getting for real. Obviously, Mississippi State is going to... They have some days ahead they have to figure out with the passing of Mike Leach. Rest in peace. And those other games are going to be tough regardless. They're going into the season with a projected starting quarterback being Graham Mertz. All due respect, the definition of mid. But, you know, he's going to have to come in, learn the system. He seems to be an intelligent person, so I'm sure he'll grasp it. But obviously they're going to miss what Anthony Richardson could do with his legs and arguably his arm too compared to Graham Mertz. The wide receiver core, not all that impressive. Offensive line obviously has to take a step back, losing Ethan White, Michael Tarquin, and obviously probably the first or second round selection of Osiris Torrance. It's hard to pick a spot where this team got better at this year. And they went 6-7 this year with a harder schedule. Maybe at cornerback with these freshmen coming in, DeJuan Johnson, Jakeem Jackson, and one more I can't name off the top of my head. One more, Sharif Denson from Jacksonville up here at Bartram Trail. So maybe at defensive back, Devin Moore is returning off an injury, so they probably be better in the secondary. But that's the only spot where I can definitely say they probably are improving over last year. And we'll see if that's good enough. The number 17th ranked class, coach was brought in to be a elite recruiter, and he's just gonna have to be better to change this around. Those classes are gonna have to be in the top 10. They absolutely gonna have to be in the top 10. You can't face a debacle like losing Jaden Rashada again. I also like Colby Collins. I think that's his name. Defensive lineman out of Alabama. He seems to be a really strong kid, like the way he uses his hands and the way he engages. So let's talk about a little bit of the positive for the Gators. Going forward, they had a really good recruiting class. I like the size of the kids they brought in. All of them seem to be on a plus size for their position groups. They're also close to the top rank at their position group. So they bringing in really quality talent. Obviously, I think they should go out and they should add somebody to compete with Graham Mertz. Maybe if one of the 3 quarterbacks from Ole Miss shake off the tree, one of Spencer Sanders, Jackson Dart, or Walker Howard, or maybe reconsider and give Florida a chance. I love Eugene Wilson. Idell, I think the wide receiver for Boone they got coming in. There are going to be some young guys playing on this team, and I think that the Florida fans have to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. Just give him some time. Unlike other teams we're going to talk about pretty soon, he didn't come in with this hype of promising great things. You got to give him a chance to lay his foundation, he has to see how people in the background work in the sense of the boosters, what the collective's going to look like. And obviously they're giving them resources, hiring a huge support staff, probably the biggest in the nation. So I think you need to give this guy time. He's bringing in a lot of Florida talent. He's attacking Florida better than Dan Mullen did, in my opinion. And overall, I think he's raising the athleticism of the team in general. So I just think it's all about giving this guy time. Maybe by year 3, we'll see the fruits of his labor, especially when DJ Lagway comes in. We'll get to see him on the field, and the quarterback room will improve tremendously, hopefully. But again, those are my thoughts on Florida. Next, we're going to move on to the Miami Hurricanes. Now, the Miami Hurricanes, they came in preseason expectations to be 10-3, to win the Coastal. Super hype about Mario. All they talked about was the great upgrade he was over Manny Diaz. And they end up going 5-7 with a lot of blowout losses. It was truly a letdown year for Miami Hurricanes fans and all those people that predicted them to have a great season. Even though they came out swinging, demolished Bethune-Cookman, destroyed Southern Miss. But as we're about to get into, we'll see where it kind of went downhill. Their best win, to me, was a 14-12 field goal fest in overtime win over Virginia. That should let you know something right there. The game wasn't impressive at all. Virginia made a lot of mistakes. They honestly should have won this game. But Miami showed resilience, and ultimately, in my opinion, talent prevailed in this. And that's going to be a lot of what we talk about with Miami. One thing Mario Cristobal, we know he was going to do, is upgrade the talent on the roster. Their worst loss, we can pick a multitude of their worst losses. I actually picked 2 for this one. I got to cheat a little bit. The first one is the 45-31 loss at home to Middle Tennessee State. Yes, Middle Tennessee State. Miami should never lose to that team no matter what, but it was damn near almost flukish when you really think about it. But they came and dominated. Middle Tennessee State was just bombing away. It seemed like they just watched the film and they were like, we can go deep on this team every time, every trip. They came in very well prepared. Their head coach, former Florida State alum Rick Stockhill, he came in, obviously, his coaches prepared, his off-field staff prepared. They saw some weakness in the Miami secondary, and it wasn't like they were running confusing routes. They were just running post and go, and seemingly just out-athleting Miami, which was ridiculous to watch. And, I'm not trying to get on them too hard, but I think everybody in Miami around this time, that's when they gave up on the season. And so there's, to me, another worst loss that they had was losing the Pig. I think Miami fans might say the Middle Tennessee loss was the worst one, but to me, the loss at Pittsburgh in the last game was the worst loss. Losing 41-16 at home with a chance for bowl eligibility on the line, that's embarrassing. That can't happen. If you're going to lose, because Pitt ended up ranked, they ended up 22 ranked at the end of the year. I guess that's an acceptable loss, but not with the stakes on the line and how they looked at home. they seemingly look like they quit. A lot of players seem like they was playing with mentality, hey man, we're gonna enter the transfer portal anyways. We know maybe we don't like the way this guy coaches, especially with some comments that Mario made at the end of the year. This seemed like a lot of turmoil, and people were just ready for the season to end and for a new chapter to come back. And I can totally understand with all of those defeats, not many people there at the games. Sometimes it's just best to let the next season start, let the young guys come in, let the competition rise in practice. But we're gonna get to that in a little bit. Now, we're gonna talk about the number 6 ranked class per 24/7. But before we get into that, we can officially say they lost their top commit in Cormani McClain, the number 2 overall player in the country. An embarrassing loss for Miami. Kind of similar, actually not kind of similar, very similar to Florida State's embarrassing loss to Travis Hunter just a year before, considering you lost the number one ranked player at this position at least, to the same guy, Deion Sanders, now of Colorado. We're going to make our own individual on Colorado coming soon. Y'all check that out. Make sure if y'all listening or y'all watching and y'all like, comment, subscribe. I appreciate all that. Really helps out the algorithm. It's going to help my grow and going to help us grow as a family and as a channel. I thank y'all. Visit Hattie'sCollection.com for new merchandise and new drop. Thank you so much. Now, Cormani McClain, extremely long cornerback. I won't get into him too much. I know it probably hurts to hear for some Hurricanes fans, but Deion doing his thing again. Deion being Deion. Them boys making noise up there. And I'm definitely going to be watching like everybody else going to watch what they do up there. Now, my 4 favorite additions from the number 6 ranked class, honestly, I can't lie. Miami brought in a terrific class. Looking up and down the list, even without Cormani, with us seemingly knowing he was going to be gone, it still was hard to just pick 4. Like John Ruiz, Mario Cristobal, they doing their thing. I got to give them their props. I love the caliber of athlete they bringing in, the speed they're bringing in, the emphasis on IMG Academy, and the emphasis on Florida in the Miami area in general. This is an excellent recruiting class, arguably underrated. Now, my 4 favorite additions for them were, Ruben Bain, 6'2", 250 pounds from Miami Central, built in a similar mold to former South Carolina or Florida State defensive end Kier Thomas. Ruben Bain, very disruptive. I think he averaged about 30 sacks per season. Kid was an absolute wrecking ball. He uses his hands really well, very explosive. You know, Miami has his brother on staff, his former, I believe, I don't want to get this wrong. Y'all Miami fans, let me know down in the comments if I'm getting this wrong. But I believe his former head coach is an analyst on staff. We'll see what he does. I think he's going to come in and get a lot of playing time. Obviously, Miami Central should be a central focus of the Miami Hurricanes going forward, and like they always should be. But Ruben Bain, I think this was the best addition in their class. Next, I had Riley Williams, 6'6", 240-pound tight end from IMG Academy. Again, Miami attacked IMG Academy very well. I love this kid. If you see a picture of him, he looked like a grown man already coming in. I can see him get a lot of PT. We know Mario Cristobal likes to run the ball. I think this kid has a chance to be good running and catching the ball out of the in line or out wide. He looks like a dominant tight end. I believe he's ranked number 4 tight end in his class. Really impressive prospect. Forgive me if I'm butchering his name. O-tackle Francis Magua, 6'6", 330 pounds from IMG Academy. Again, Miami is really attacking this school. That's a very large human being as a freshman, 6'6", 330 pounds. Him and Samson Akunola are going to be terrors maybe in a couple of years, or maybe they come in and they're good. Both these guys are already physically developed. Look like strong. Look like he's a better, as far as Francis, he's a better run blocker than he is a pass protector at this moment, but he still is a really good prospect. And Mario's going to get these type of guys. He put good offensive linemen in the NFL. Obviously, his offensive line coach, Alex Maribel, are known for producing great offensive linemen. I think they're going to continue to rack up these guys. And again, we know they like to run the ball. They want to be physical. Their practices are going to be demanding. They're going to be a test of will. Mario's going to see who wants to be there and who doesn't want to be there. And I respect that. Last but not least, we're going to bring out Damari Brown. Obviously, the number one cornerback in their class now that Kamani is gone. 6'1", 180 pounds from American heritage. Again, they're attacking down South Florida, and as they got to. To me, this guy's a shutdown corner, already large, has a nice, decent frame. His frame almost suggests he can develop into a good safety or be a dominant corner. Obviously, great teaching down there at American Heritage for the position. He came in with his brother Devontae Brown, who was another big addition from UCF in the transfer portal. I like this guy's film. Arguably, it was comparables to Kamani's. I think he's a top 3 player at the position this year. Now, we're going with the pessimistic outlook for Miami. There's a lot of things to choose from. They didn't look well coached this year, to be quite frank. It seemed like there was a culture divide in the locker room as far as who they want to be, but you're going to have that with a new coach. You know, certain guys, especially the older guys, are going to want it a certain way. The younger guys, of course, they're trying to play, so they're going to do whatever the coach say. Who was right or wrong, we'll see in the long run. Obviously, Mario got a big $85 million deal, so we're going to see how it play out in the long run. They lost a lot of embarrassing games this year, and unfortunately, they lost a lot of guys to the transfer portal, and they're going to be playing a lot of young freshmen. Again, extremely talented freshmen, but you're relying on freshmen. That's never really a good thing, and to be honest, I don't see how they're going to be much different than Texas A&M was this coming season, relying on a lot of freshmen. Again, very talented, but they got to learn the playbook. They didn't have, I don't think Miami had as many early enrollees as they would like. I think they might want to get some more guys in and maybe attack the transfer portal more hard to plug some of those immediate needs. We got to see what Tyler Van Dyke looks like coming back. Didn't look that good last year, especially with the loss of Rent Lashley. I actually thought he was going to end up at SMU, to be honest. But he came back. We got to see how the shoulder heals. See him get some of that Heisman first-round pick stock back. And we can go from there. But, yeah, they're going to be relying on a lot of young guys. And I don't think this is the season that that it's all going to come together in the way that they win the Coastal. Well, the pods are gone, actually. Actually, the divides are gone. It's just best record. I think that's what's best for the conference, to be honest. The best 2 teams playing the best 2 teams. So we'll see how it shakes out. Positive outlook for Miami Hurricanes. They do have a lot of young talent. TVD is coming back. I think they have to replace the OC, get it more spread out, especially with the young athletes that are coming in. I think they're going to develop really nicely. They're all bought into Mario. Forgive me for that, y'all. They're all bought into Mario. As far as we can tell right now, they bring in some good talent on the offensive and defensive line. They're getting stronger in the trenches, which is always important when you want to compete with the elites of the game, like Alabama, Georgia, Florida State. Those types of teams, you want to be able to compete with them in the trenches. You don't want to get pushed around. Obviously, they're relying on young guys in there, so it's going to take them a couple years to add the muscle to their frame that they're going to need. They already have good frames, but to add the muscle, that's going to take a couple off seasons, and we'll see how that plays out. Don't think they have a tough schedule at all. They should be favored in some games. And again, you're going to get the developing reps for those young guys. And I do like 1 or 2 of their transfer portal additions to make big impacts. Obviously, Damari and Devontae getting to play with your brother, that's an opportunity that you probably shouldn't pass up. And that's only going to increase their bond, hopefully. But that's my outlook on the Miami Hurricanes. Last but not least, moving on to the state champs, the Florida State Seminoles. Now, Florida State preseason expectations were 8-4, 7-5. Some people even had them lower than that, 6-6. Some people, Mike Verrill was talking about find me 6 wins on the schedule. They were expected to finish fifth in the ACC Atlantic race behind Clemson, Wake, Louisville. I think some people had them finishing behind BC and Syracuse. So it wasn't much faith in the Noles this year or Mike Norvell. It was a lot of hot seat talk if he didn't have a winning record this year. Obviously, Florida State went out and shattered that. It still finished behind Clemson in the Atlantic, but only behind Clemson with a 10-3 record, going out with a great bowl win over Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl. Had a 3-game losing streak there in the middle of the season against Wake, NC State, Clemson. All those are winnable games, but alas, they did not. We're facing some injuries during that time, but ultimately, win-loss is what matters. They didn't win those games, and they went 10-3, which is still a great season. And we're going to see what the outlook looks like for the future. We're going to talk about that in a little bit coming up here. Their best win. Florida State's best win this year. They had a lot of good wins. I'll say dominating Miami 45-3 in Miami, in their house. That was probably the best win of the season. In a close second, or maybe even first, was LSU. That set the tone for the entire season. Not many people picked Florida State to win. Obviously, LSU's coming in with Brian Kelly. I expect them to be dominant next year. They're really doing great in recruiting and the transfer portal, and it's going to be another bloodbath in the first game of the season next year in Camping World Stadium. But that set the tone for the season. The national audience, again, not many people pick Florida State, with Mike Norvell seemingly on the hot seat from outside prognosticus. And coming in, I mean, they beat them by blocking a field goal the last play of the game. It was truly a great game. They should have won by more, but I think it was just what people had seen. We know Ed Ogeron was recruiting really well. He didn't leave the cupboard bare. They still coming in with a lot of talent, including Jaden Daniels, Keyshawn Boutte, and Florida State did have the advantage of playing Duquesne in week 0 to get their new players, their new transfers, more adjusted with the game plans in a live action situation. And LSU ended up having a great season, so that was a great win on Florida State's resume. The worst loss. The worst loss was NC State. They should have won that game. NC State ended up losing their quarterback, Darren Leary, who was, in my opinion, a great quarterback. Probably should have went to the draft last year. I digress. They lost him in about the third quarter of that game, and they were up in that game. I think they were up 17-3 at NC State, and the backup quarterback came in. They didn't really trust him to throw the ball at all. He was just running the ball. They were running the ball effectively. Seemed like Florida State took their foot off the gas, like, hey, he's injured. We got this in the bag. And Jordan Travis, a Heisman candidate for next year, go visit his website. And again, I want to take this time to tell y'all, or ask y'all, to like, comment, subscribe, comment on the video. Tell me about y'all thoughts. Maybe y'all liked another edition or more. Maybe y'all had a different best win or worst loss. Y'all let me know what y'all thinking. Subscribe, visit Hattie's Collection. Again, I appreciate y'all so much. Now, they should have took that game against a ranked NC State team. There's no excuse, but it is what it is. We move on. Now, Florida State ended up having the 16th ranked recruiting class, one ahead of Florida. Their huge recruiting loss was Keldrick Falk. Defensive lineman ended up going to Auburn, and Hugh Freeze. That was a huge loss. Florida State's been taking a lot of hits at the top of their recruiting class in the past couple years. They didn't all the way back to, we lost Travis Hunter. So the top of their class keeps getting into troubled situation, sort of towards the end, including Luke Altmaier as well. Um, my favorite four additions to this were a mixture of transfers and high school recruits. So my favorite two high school recruits were Hakeem Williams, 6'2", 215-pound wide receiver. I love the fact he's already enrolled. Um, Fast player, but not blazing speed. To me, what's most impressive about him is possession ability. When he gets the ball after the catch, he's an absolute monster with the ball in his hands. Very hard to stop. Physically developed kid. He already has broad shoulders, seemingly to put on more weight and become more physical. Has a wide catch radius. I really love this kid as far as a prospect. I think he was the best receiver in the country this year. He was ranked number 3, but I think he's the best receiver in the country. Time will tell. Reminds me of a lot of Dez Bryant. Remember, you heard this here first. Dez Bryant. Number 2 was Lucas Simmons, 6'8", around 307 pounds was his official weigh-in once he enrolled. He's also enrolled early enrollee. Florida State brought in a lot of offensive linemen through the transfer portal this year. I don't think he's going to play, but, you know, maybe he'll get a couple reps if they end up blowing out a few teams. We'll see him get a chance to be on the field, see what his hands are like, see what his movement is like at that height. We know a lot of times at that height, you know, they're former basketball players, awkward kids still adjusting to their body. We'll see, but I think he's a great developmental prospect for Alex Atkins and Mike Norvell. He's a very good moldable clay, and I like his potential. From the transfer portal, I love the addition of Fentrell Cypress from Virginia. I believe 6'1", 180-pound cornerback. When I watch this film, I just like how physical he is. He's coming up. He's close to him. He puts his hands on the receiver. Very good jam technique. Was the best defender on Virginia's team last year. He played in that game against Miami. And it allows some of the defensive backs to slide down a position. Obviously, I think he's cornerback 1 this year. He was the highest ranked cornerback in the portal for a reason. He allows Renardo Green to slide down to number 2 or to be a nickel, which I think is personally is his best position with how long his arms are, how physical he is. And he sort of has questionable speed. He wasn't really getting burnt, but there was a lot of safety help this year, and they're losing something with Jamie Robinson to come in for the draft. So we're going to see how that plays out, but he allows Renardo Green to slide down a position, Jerry and Jones to slide down a positions, young guys like Azare Thomas, Amarion Cooper, and Kevin Knowles to farther develop in their time period, because they're here for the long haul. Edwin Joseph as well. They're all here for the long haul. So it allows them to develop, and again, if they're placed in some blowouts this year, those guys are going to get on the field, but they're going to be in rotation anyways, and Fentrell Cypress allows them not to be the end-all, be-all. He allows you to put him on the number 1 receiver, and let's go. Bo be a dog. And obviously this is a money year with it being a senior year, so we're going to see how it plays out. I personally think he's an NFL draft pick, but we're going to see how it goes. Another one I loved was Jeremiah Byers, offensive tackle, right tackle from UTEP, 6'4", around 331 pounds, I believe. He has NFL upside. I love this guy's mirroring technique. He was never overwhelmed as an athlete, and obviously that's surprising coming from UTEP, but he was never overwhelmed as an athlete. He talked with the Nose 24/7 staff. I watched the interview where he just talked about how Alex Atkins was saying he needs to improve his power, and I agree with that. He wasn't overwhelmed on the bull rush or anything like that, but obviously he's facing an uptick in competition from UTEP's conference to the ACC and with the teams on Florida State's schedule. So we're going to see how that manifests, but I love the addition. A pessimistic outlook. Oh, we're going long here. A pessimistic outlook is, honestly, I don't really see one for this coming up year. It's going to be how after this year, the development of the team in the sense of when all of the older talent leaves, or when they leave going to the draft or depart via the transfer portal next year, it seems like we're cashing in all in this year, which I don't have a problem with. It's been a lot of years of losing and development and pure misery, but we're going to see how it goes. This year, the schedule is a lot more easy than last year, but they're facing a tough upcoming game against LSU in the first game, and they got to get the monkey off their back in Clemson. We know Clemson rules the ACC, if we're being quite honest. So we're going to see how they play, especially with Clemson hiring Garrett Riley away from TCU. It's going to be a tough game. The quarterback's going to improve. He was just a freshman. They've been recruiting well all over, especially on the defensive line, even though they lose some guys. In that game, the first game at least, is going to be played up in Death Valley in Clemson. That's going to be a tough one. And we're going to see how the rest of the league develops. But I expect it to be a really good season for Florida State next year and challenge for the crown. The positive, one more negative thing is the recruiting at the high school level. Obviously, Florida State has a claim to be the transfer portal kings, but at the high school level, except for the top guys in their class, I like their developmental prospects. I think Mike Norvell is a great evaluator of talent. He has a good support staff, but at the same time, they're not getting those top-ranked guys in the amount that you would expect for Florida State to this point. Now, we know NIL has changed the game, and we're grateful for the Battles In to have stepped in and help us secure some of these guys. But, I mean, they got to improve. This has to be the year where they have to have at least a top 11, top 12 class. It has to be there, especially at the important positions. We got a lot of skill positions. We got to improve recruiting in the trenches. We got to improve recruiting in the trenches. I love offensive line at the high school level, but we might be losing Alex Atkins soon. He's getting a lot of head coach looks, maybe even Alvin Fuller. Again, we're going all in on this year. That's the positive outlook, but it's also a pessimistic one in the sense of what does the future hold. But we got to wait for the future. You know, we got to get there first. So, positive outlooks. There's a lot of positive outlooks. 10-3 season, best season since 2016. A good bowl win against an Oklahoma team, dominating your rival in Miami, beating your rival in Florida at home, playing it really close with Clemson, I think losing by 6 points. And they had a lot of players enter the draft or enter the transfer portal in DJ Ungale. I hope I said that right. Sorry, DJ. And everybody else seemingly on a rebuilding timeline. Mac Brown lost a lot from UNC. Louisville is losing Malik Cunningham. So a lot of changes around the league, including first-year coaches just going into their second year, and we know that's when they're trying to get more of their players on the field to lay down the foundation, the culture, and things of that nature. So it's gonna be a go for Florida State. They got a tough first game, but they also picked up a lot of great players through the transfer portal, even better than last year, which to me, bearing out the fruit, was the best transfer portal class. They picked up a better one this year, including the top players at the position, I think, in 3 different positions, and a number 2 player at the tight end position, including the number 1 player at the tight end position. Jakeem Bell was awesome at South Carolina. Again, Fentrell Cypress, Braden Fisk, I believe, had the most pressures by interior defensive lineman per PFF for this year. So Daryl Jackson, 6'6", 315-pound run stopper from Miami. It's always good getting one from the rivals if he's a good player, and this kid seems to be a good player. So a lot of positives looks for this season. Again, we got to wait for the future to get here to see how it unfolds in 2024. I think this team has a great shot at making the playoffs, to be totally honest. I'm standing here first. Jordan Travis has a chance to win the Heisman. We, as a fan base, Florida State fans should be expecting this team to compete and win the ACC this year. There can't be no excuses at this point. At a certain point, we got to get back to the. We got back to the winning this year. Now we got to get back to the winning big phase of this. I think Mike Norvell has the support. I think he has the smarts to get it done, and I think they will get it done. I think we have the talent. how good is it to see lists where they talk about, man, Florida State has one of the most talented rosters? I know as a fan, I can't believe that when I read it, because for so many years, it's been a lack of talent. It's been a lack of adequate coaching. It's been this and that. Not enough resources. It's been them boys broke. It's been all of this. So it's good to finally be turning the page. And ultimately, I believe that points to we got the right guy. A lot of former people who have been around Mike Norvell talk about him glowingly. The recruits talk about his energy. And I think that energy and desire to change this around has had a great impact, not just on the community, not just on the college, but also on the community. Tallahassee is starting to reflect the personality and the energy of Mike Norvell itself, getting back to those winning ways, and I expect those to continue. Man, this has been a really great episode, my longest one yet. 32 Minute Podcast, episode 18. I appreciate y'all. Again, y'all like, comment, subscribe. I got some more content dropping tomorrow. This episode will be dropping tomorrow on Friday. I appreciate y'all so much. Visit Hattie'sCollection.com. Thank y'all.